We're live. Dr. Joan Ifland of Seattle, United States, is here to talk about food addiction, processed food addiction, two heavyweight qualifications, a PhD in addiction, in nutrition, and a Stanford MBA. That's pretty impressive. And I'm sure we'll find out how you're putting both of those to use sooner or later. But I wanted to open up, Joan, with what you were saying just before we came on about how many diets form dogma within themselves, even though they see certain other diets as the enemy. And you were talking about how addiction actually plays into all of their hands.
Mm-hmm. So I do think that whenever we're arguing about food plans, the processed food industry is running to the bank with our money. We are, in my world, we have been given, using the tobacco addiction model, we have been given a new epidemic. So smoking was an epidemic. We have, as the tobacco industry got caught up in the courts in the US and they lost their US market, they were just gleefully moving over into processed foods. So in 1985, 3 short years, tobacco bought Kraft, Nabisco, and General Foods, the big food processors. And you just have to ask yourself, why would people who make their business from addiction, why would they be moving over into processed foods? It's because they saw the opportunity. And it was a much more massive opportunity than tobacco ever was, because it's lots of different substances, and tobacco, affects part of the brain, but processed foods affect the entire brain. So they had sugar and high fructose corn syrup to addict us with. Flour and gluten, it's a different kind of addiction. Salt and dairy have morphine-like properties. Dairy will put a 100-pound calf to sleep. That's what dairy is designed to do. And it's also designed to turn on the weight gain genes in that calf. You want that calf to gain 500 pounds in a year. So dairy it's not only is it addictive, it's quite contrary to our goals. And then you have the fats. We've got new evidence for fat addiction.
And the whole world drinks Starbucks cappuccinos with extra hazelnut syrup.
Oh gosh, caffeine, and then food additives. Because I know in the US, there's not effective monitoring of what's actually in the package. So I love what Marion Nessel is an expert in the US, and she says, if it has a label, it's a warning label.
Whatever the label says, it's a warning.
Yeah, so everybody's fighting the same demon. The addiction is just like a demon. And it doesn't, whether you're doing carnivore or keto or low carb or Mediterranean or plant-based, the alterations to the brain that create cravings and loss of control are they're in everybody. And why that just sounds like such an over-the-top statement, but I'm a researcher. And what is the evidence that most people are suffering from cravings, from addiction? You look at things like, look at the brain scans, and the brain scans of obese people, overweight people, and eating disordered people are doing the same thing that the brains of drug addicted people are doing. So the neuro evidence, if you will, the neuroscience, the brain evidence, that would be conclusive all on its own. But then you have this reinforcing evidence. So like the American Psychiatric Association says, if the brain is altered in an addictive way, people are doing specific things, so that you can go into a professional's office and you can get an addiction diagnosis without having to have a brain scan. And we now have evidence. And so there are 11 of those criteria in the US. They're very close to the international, it's called the ICD-10. And the American Psychiatric Association says if you're experiencing 6 or more out of the 11, you have a severe addiction. And that is what I discovered in the course of writing the textbooks. I wrote most of the textbook. People, and now the evidence is getting stronger and stronger every year that those 6 out of the 11 are showing up. They're being experienced by people with obesity and overweight. So you have these two really strong corroborating fields of evidence. This is not just one study here and a few studies there. I wrote a full chapter on each one of those 11 behaviors for the textbook and found tons of evidence that those behaviors exist in overeating. So it's a done deal. It's over. We know it exists. We have the evidence. 83% of people in the United States are now overweight or obese.
83.
83, and they're eating 73% of their food in processed. So only 27%. So only it's only like
That's 17%.
27%, about a third in unprocessed foods, which are food. And the rest of it is in drugs that the brain thinks are drugs. It doesn't take very long to addict a person to processed foods. Like if you're eating them regularly, which everybody is, it takes about 6 months. And we have new evidence also showing that the tobacco industry, even as early as 1963, was using tobacco addiction marketing techniques on sugar for children. So we've been suffering from this in the United States since 1963.
Wow. Yeah. Let's talk about the different things that we could be addicted to, because I think like there's addiction umbrella, which is sort of a loss of control, which maybe we can define. But when you talk about food addiction, you said you said sugar addiction, processed food, you said gluten. Where are the lines here, and what are the differences?
So once you've been sensitized, if you think about smoking, for example, once your brain has been trained to respond to a release of craving chemicals, a release of cravings in response to a substance, like you will get cravings for cigarettes. And if you just smoke 3 cigarettes, your brain will start to alter. That's how addictive cigarettes are.
Wow.
Every time you smell the cigarette smoke, your brain will release cravings. So you don't, or if you see like a Marlboro logo jacket, or you're wearing a Marlboro belt buckle, or you have a Marlboro lighter, those are now you are suffering from associative cues. So the cue that's associated, the trigger, the reminder, the stimulation, the messaging, if it's associated with the addictive substance, you will get that craving release. So that is a big part of this strategy. They took that strategy from tobacco and they applied it to sugary drinks for children. This is research that's being done at the University of California, San Francisco. That university is the depository of the internal tobacco documents that were required to be revealed and deposited by their court settlements. So this is not speculation. This is the tobacco industry in their own internal documents bragging about transferring their addiction technology to children. So we have this bad. There's a reason why it's so severe.
And the examples of that, with the children, how would they? I'm not questioning it. I have no doubt. I mean,
it's chilling. It's chilling.
Are there some examples where you can
see a package? So
here's
a vivid an incredibly destructive example. The tobacco industries used a reward system. So if you want to give somebody an addiction, first of all, you hide the substance in a seemingly innocent product. So they made cigarettes relaxing, they made them sexy, they made them rebellious. Cigarettes are great, they're just a symbol of your independence. And then they concentrated nicotine and put it back into the cigarettes. They soaked the tobacco leaves in sugar so that you wouldn't just cough it up. You had to get it to stay in the lungs long enough to extract the nicotine. And so that's step one, is you hide an addictive substance in a seemingly innocent product. Step two is then you get the person to use the product often enough to train the brain cells to release the cravings. And then you give the product all these fake attributes so that the person will associate it with power or sexiness or whatever. And then you surround the person with reminders. And as I said, the reminder will release the cravings and loss of control. And when you get that craving release, it pulls the blood supply away from the frontal lobe. So you can't think clearly anymore about why you don't want to do it. That part of the braking system is being deprived of blood flow, and your brain is just consumed with the cravings. And off you go like a robot. We call it the zombie walk.
Yeah.
You're walking, your frontal lobe is trying. It could be screaming, no, don't do that. We don't want to do that. We said we weren't going to do that. But the more primitive part of the brain, the reward system, is much, much stronger than the frontal lobe. Frontal lobe's only 2% of the brain. So when people say, I should have more willpower, no, your frontal lobe is only 2% of your brain. So this is the process. What they discovered is the best way to get all of those steps to happen is with a reward program. So this is the Marlboro Country Store. And the way it works is you buy cigarettes and you collect the purchase points, is what they call them.
Yeah, like a token or a sticker or something. Yeah.
Proof of purchase.
Yeah.
You collect them and then you can send them into Marlboro and get a jacket or a belt buckle or a lighter. And now you've accomplished all the steps. You've hidden the nicotine in the cigarette. With the purchase rewards, you've gotten them to buy the product more often maybe than they would have otherwise. Often enough to train the brain to release cravings in response to the product. And now you've ascribed all these false values to smoking: rebellious, sexy, masculine. And then now with the logoed items, you've surrounded that person with stimulation. Go get it, go get it, go get it. Remember. You've got the jacket on, you're wearing the belt buckle, you get out your lighter, you go into your pants pocket and you feel that lighter, and you're just constantly craving cigarettes.
And you're the Marlboro man now. You are the Marlboro man, basically. Wow. So how did they do that with sweets?
So it was through sugary drinks.
Okay.
So they started in 1963. R.J. Reynolds bought Hawaiian Punch. Hawaiian Punch had been a mixer, an adult mixer, alcohol mixer, and they repositioned it to children. And they got a character named Punchy. Punchy's big joke was an older man would come into the cartoon. It's a cartoon. And the older man would be there, and Punchy would say, "Would you like a Hawaiian Punch?" And the man would say over and over again, "Sure, thank you." and then the character would punch him. It was a gag. It was a joke. So you have this really, really sick. So what the child associated with Punchy was, I have control over adults. I am more powerful than adults. I can trick adults. It's a very, very scary thing to imply to a child that would be a good thing to do, to be able to punch adults.
And it worked.
Yeah. So they had the Punchy warehouse, and children could collect Hawaiian Punch proof of purchase, send it in, and then get Hawaiian Punch logoed toys, games, clothes, so that they were not just themselves now. This is what's so diabolical about this. They would be playing with these toys and craving Hawaiian Punch, and their friends who were playing with them would also be triggered. And the company that really took this to the next degree was Philip Morris. When they bought Kraft, they got Kool-Aid. So they advertised their wacky that is the height of irony. Yeah. That they would call their warehouse the wacky warehouse, as they're creating mental illness in children. So when you addict anybody, they no longer get to choose what they think about. The cravings dominate the brain. And when you do that to a child, of course, they don't learn life skills. Yeah. Because they're thinking about Kool-Aid. And they're not thinking about, how could I handle this relationship differently? The frontal lobe has got learning, attention, decision-making, impulse control, and memory. So now you are you're depriving the child or the adult, anybody, of those functions. These children are supposed to be getting an education. They're supposed to be learning a relationship management, behaviors, ethical, how to be in integrity, and none of that's happening. And I think it's one of the reasons why we see such, I'll just use this term. It's a judgmental term, but it's bad behavior. We see a lot of bad behavior in the world. And I think it's because people didn't learn, especially emotion management. Yeah. So in our programs, we teach all that. We would just started out. We said, we should show our members what skills we're teaching them. And we started this spreadsheet, and it just kept getting longer and longer and longer. And I'm like, why? Well, it's because the tobacco industry went after children and deprived them of the time in their life when they should have been gaining life skills. So we're really teaching basic life skills, self-parenting skills in our programs now.
So, how does one know if one is a sugar addict or a food addict? How would you know?
Sugar or gluten or flour or excessive salt or dairy or processed fats, regular fats, caffeine, food additives. How would you? So it's so important to know that there's a list.
I'm definitely a caffeine addict, 100%.
Because if you just get off the sugar, what we're looking at now, we'll have a paper out on it hopefully this year, is that you will easily transfer the addiction to fat. We have really good new evidence for fat addiction. It means, so rats, these are rat studies, but those rats are exhibiting addictive behavior within 6 weeks of having free access or intermittent access to fat. So how would you know? Well, let's do the top 6. I want to say where this data came from. We've had a self-quiz on our website, processedfoodaddiction.com, for years. And these are the 6 criteria that people will tick off most often. Number 1 is unintended use. You have a plan, you have a vision for how much you're going to use, and then you use more. And you wake up, I'm going to diet today.
Yeah.
And by 10 o'clock, you're in the break room, or you're in your car at fast food, or we have convenience stores in the US. They used to be gas stations, and now they're just an ocean of drugs.
We've got something similar. Gas station / sweetie shop. Yeah.
Sweetie shop. Okay.
Yeah.
You have a plan that you're not going to use, or you're going to use a specific amount. You open a package of something, you're just going to have one, and you end up eating the package, or you end up eating more than you had intended to. Failure to cut back. So we have, as I said, 83% of the US is overweight or obese. I remember coming to South Africa. We took our kids there when they were in high school. And then my daughter worked. She worked in Johannesburg for 2 years. And so I visited twice while she was there. In the time, so that would have been a space of 10 years, maybe 15 years, between when we took them in high school and when I went back to visit her. And in that time, like, I noticed, because I was already in recovery, on the first visit, I saw 2 obese people in a visit, probably spanned at least 2 or 3 weeks, and we went around the country. Wow. And then when I got back 15 years later, lots and lots, maybe most people were either overweight or had already progressed into obesity. So it happened so fast, and it's because the tobacco industry was already super expert at making these brain alterations, the addiction. So what we have now, because we've been at this now 30, 40 years, is we have evidence that people do regain the weight. They will lose it, and 99% of people within 3 years has regained at least part of it. So I would hope that your listeners are thinking to themselves, oh, that wasn't my fault. That wasn't my fault. That wasn't my fault. It was not your fault. You were set up.
Yeah.
And then we have cravings. We have good evidence that cravings coincide with BMI. We have time spent. Interestingly enough, people will identify that. I'm thinking about this all the time. Not just the time you're spending getting, consuming, and sleeping off, because these are drugs, you do sleep them off. And the time spent going to the doctor to get medical help because you're sick, or the time spent when you're just too tired to do anything and you're defaulting onto a screen. It's also the time spent inside your head. You're thinking about this stuff obsessively. When we get people off the processed foods and their brains stop craving it, they're so relieved that they don't have to think about those substances, those foods all the time. So it does progress. The cravings get worse and worse, and people find themselves just thinking about it and stressing about it. There's a very tight circuit in the brain of addiction and stress. So if you think about processed foods, it activates the stress system. And if you're stressed, it activates the addiction, and they just aggravate each other.
I used to have that with alcohol. Used to think about it all the time. Should I, shouldn't I? And like, I didn't drink that much, but I thought about it all the time. So in terms of time spent, it was definitely like addictive, even though on the outside I was together with it. It's crazy.
It's just torture. It's just torture. And then you have use in spite of knowledge of consequences. You know you're not supposed to be using it. You know it's going to hurt you, and you use it anyway. That's just an indication that the craving centers in the brain are more powerful than the frontal lobe. And we have really stunning new evidence for that. And that is that during the quarantine, 44% of Americans gained weight.
44%?
you're seeing every day in the press, every news outlet. It's the obese people who are dying. It's the diabetics who are dying.
Yeah.
And yet people gained weight. It's a really dramatic example of use in spite of knowledge of consequences. It's not just, oh, my doctor's going to be annoyed with me. It's, I could die, and I still have loss of control.
Wow.
And then the last one is use for reasons other than hunger. So if you're using because you're tired, or because you're irritable, or because you're depressed, or because you have a stomach ache, or because you have a headache, that's a drug use. That's not food. Then the other 5 really quickly are relationship problems, activities given up, and hazardous use, like you're driving with your elbow because you're putting this stuff in your mouth.
Yeah. Okay.
And obese people have a lot more accidents. Their balance is off. And then, let's see, activities given up. Failure to fulfill roles. Like you can't get down on the floor anymore with your kids and you're still eating. Or you're too brain fogged to apply for a promotion. And so you don't. Brain fog is a big piece of this. It's brain inflammation. Yeah. So, and then the other one is you're using more than you used to. You used to get this size container of ice cream, and now you're getting 2, and now you're getting a tub, and it just takes more and more to create that.
I'm looking at this list, and I mean, this is amazing. So can you just repeat the URL where that is? And I'll go and find a link later and drop it in the comments. You said it's
Thank you. Our main website is processedfoodaddiction.com.
Okay.
The website where you can get help is Food Addiction Reset.
Yeah, I think I've got that here. Food Addiction Reset. Yeah, I got that. So I'll get the other one and pop it in there later. Joan, this list of 10 things here, the failure to cut back, unintended use. I mean, this just applies. The 2 that scream at me here is that the whole world suffers from is alcohol and social media. I'm looking at social media here and thinking, actually, if I think about the people close to me, they are addicted to social media. Like activities given up. Is like a deep and meaningful conversation considered an activity? Like you could have connected with a family member, but instead you stayed at your phone for an hour.
This is why relationship difficulties are on that list. The addiction is getting all the attention. And this is why I'm going to say this. I just have to tell the truth.
Go for it.
This is why you've got to get pretty immersive, long-term treatment. Whichever addiction brings you into treatment, you have to treat the brain's tendency to seek an outside source of stimulation. Because if you just get off sugar, boom, you'll have fat addiction, and the sugar addiction will come back if it's not treated. And if you just treat the processed food addiction, yeah, you settle in and you get all those substances one by one or all at once. Your brain will just slide over to video games or gambling or romance novels, which is pornography. There are many industries using the addiction business model because of brain imaging technology. They can just slide somebody into an MRI machine and show them pictures and see which one lights up their brain the most. So the fundamental skill that we're teaching in our programs is thought control.
Well, let's talk more about that. Yeah.
Detect when your brain is getting a little too excited about an opportunity, and you can head off that next addiction. Like, I'll give you a really funny example. We had a member who had to get some work on her house done. And this wonderful, handsome, funny, charming handyman appears at her house, and they have a wonderful afternoon together. He gets the work done, and she's visiting with him, and they're just having this wonderful time. He's married. And so they finish the end of the day. They give each other a big hug, and he gets into his truck and drives away. And she comes into one of our chats. So we have Zoom or conference call 16 hours out of 24.
Wow.
Why? Because you can use a chat, you can use a Zoom session to calm your brain after it's become excited. So she comes in and she's telling us about the wonderful time she had with this guy, and I'm hearing it. Addiction transfer. There is such a thing as relationship addiction because, of course, relationships are accompanied by a big old flood of dopamine and excitement, and you get high thinking about the person, blah, blah, blah. It can be an addiction unless you recognize it. So she finished her story, and I asked her, we're very, very respectful in our community. I asked her if she would like some feedback on it. And she said yes. And I explained what might be going on. And she just like, oh, I see it. I see it. I see it. I'm getting high off of this nice, funny, charming, handsome man. And I don't want to go down that path. So she was able to see it, and just, you can get that dopamine release by coming into community. So that is the brilliance of Zoom. Zoom was the delivery vehicle for when you have that kind of a structure, 16 hours a day, you can customize your own recovery program. You might have a really bad experience, and you might need to be just sitting with your friends in the community all day long. Or you might have an up and running, very productive life, and you just want to get rid of those darn cravings before you get diabetes. You can check in at 15 minutes in the morning, and that might be all you need. You might only need that 3 or 4 times a week, and the next person needs to be on that screen, for all their waking hours. So it's and then it could change from day to day. So to have a program that you can access as you need it. So what do you do? I mean, when I got to chapter 6 of those 6 chapters, and I realized, damn, it was such an epiphany that we were dealing with a severe addiction. I immediately went to the research and said, what do you do for a severe addiction? Oh, yeah, you go to residential treatment for a couple of years.
Wow.
Well, we're not sending hundreds of millions of people to residential treatment. And the next level is called intensive outpatient, where you go to the hospital for 3 hours a day for months. So when I did all this discovery work in 2014 to 2017. I turned in the manuscript in the middle of 2017, and I immediately got to work on a teaching platform. I thought, well, at least I can teach this. And then at the end of that year, I met Zoom.
Yeah.
And we did our first program the first week of 2018. I had been looking for 22 years. I had done 14 unsuccessful things over 22 years. And then boom, on that very first day, we had 10 volunteers who had been trying and failing for many years to get control. And they were all eating clean that first day. So now we know that the highest, most powerful system in the brain is the drive to belong. And that's what happened that day. The drive to belong to that online community, 10 people, was greater than the drive to eat the processed foods. The drive to belong was more powerful than the addiction. And that is what is the saving grace there.
Is there anything in there about the drive to use being almost a way to anesthetize or soothe the feeling of not belonging?
So it's a step-by-step process, especially with this particular addiction, because it has such a huge impact on body shape. And then the culture, the US culture, not all cultures, but the US culture rejects that body shape. Isolation is a big, big factor in the misery. So it's a loop. The addiction isolates us, and then the isolation triggers the addiction. It's tragic. But so it's a mistake, in my opinion, to think that the substances are serving an emotional function. No, they're not. The addiction is creating emotions. So all addictions, all drugs, give you highs and crashes in glucose and adrenaline. So this isn't artificial. It's a chemical. It's an allergic reaction, if you will. You can think of it that way. The anger, the anxiety, the sadness, the shame, those are mechanical. They're the machinery that creates good feelings and optimism has been shut down. You have this thing called downregulation of the pleasure pathways. And then on top of that, you have unstable glucose, and you have unstable adrenaline levels, cortisol levels. And those have a profound impact on behavior, emotions, beliefs, thoughts, and it's artificial. It's not related to life. Once you get all those substances out, and then gradually people are strong enough to detach from toxic relationships and toxic media, toxic jobs, toxic workplaces, toxic faith organizations, toxic volunteer situations, toxic social situations. Gradually, they get the strength to set boundaries, to say, you know what, I don't want to see that person anymore. They're not helping me. And so they withdraw. Now they have the skill set to recognize and withdraw from stressful situations. They have a place to come in and test things out. Like, I'm not sure about this, but I think I would like to stop seeing this person. They'll describe the person. We don't tell people what to do. We use this wonderful technique called motivational interviewing. As they hear themselves describing the person, and the host's job is just to not word for word, but to repeat back to the person the situation. The person will hear it and they'll see it for themselves, and like, and then we will work out with them. They'll say, what would you like to do about this situation? Well, I think I'll send them an email and just tell them I'm not available. Great. Awesome. Boom.
Amazing.
So it's many skills: emotion management, sleep management, food production management is a whole skill in of itself. Figuring out what your food plan should be, customizing your food plan for yourself. A lot of skills.
I want to get into that eventually, but I got a couple more questions about the nitty gritty here. And in fact, Linda Solberg, she's also a PhD in psychology. In fact, she and a few other researchers invented FIT, which is functional imagery training. So it ties into many types of behavior change. She actually just posted a comment. She said she's interested to hear your take on the Rat Park study and whether you know of anywhere where it's transferred or been replicated with humans.
So not the study, but that's what we're offering. That's our Food Addiction Reset is the name of the Addiction Reset Community is the name of our core service.
That's your Rat Park.
Yeah. What we do know, and I'm sure she knows this, could you say the name of her program again? Functional what training?
Functional imagery training. I'll send you the links afterwards.
Thank you. And it was Linda Salisbury?
Solbrig. Yeah, I'll connect you via email.
Thanks. Thank you so much. So what we do know is that when a human enters community, they get an oxytocin release. And oxytocin travels to the dopamine system and regulates, calms, and organizes the dopamine system. So this is why this 16 hours a day, and we're working as we are training people. We have a training program, and we get enough people, we will go to 24 hours a day. Because if you get a craving, if you're headed towards loss of control, it's something else we train in. It's cue management, it's stimulation management, so that people know early on, I'm headed towards a craving. I just sat in front of that person who was eating blah, 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 and I can feel the excitement building. Boom, you just, because you can get Zoom on your phone.
Yeah.
Now your phone is an associative cue for calming.
Wow.
You just pick up your phone. It's so tightly associated with being in community. You'll get that oxytocin release. You don't actually have to open your phone, and you're safe again. You think about your brain as having neighborhoods.
Yes.
And the craving neighborhood is a dangerous neighborhood, and you just want to get out of there as fast as you can, back over to your well-trained, controlled, happy neighborhood.
I love that. Yeah.
You can use a cue, and you can stimulate your safe neighborhood to start producing neurotransmitters and get control of your thinking. So, and then we do a lot of fun things in our community. We're 3 times a year, we have what we call Reset Week, and we just do fun things. We go for walks, we go swimming with each other, we go boating, we play games and puzzles, we do karaoke. Fun turns out to be the 2 things that will really give somebody self-control: fun and kindness.
Yeah, I love that. I think that a lot of people see giving something up as torturous. And one of the biggest mistakes we make is we make it torturous, punish ourselves for a big weekend with a week of restriction, rather than creating fun. So, okay. How do you implement that? I mean, obviously with everything you've said, but do you have like a fun module? Yeah.
Over Zoom. Yeah. We have, like, once a week, we have pet hour. People will bring their pets to pet hour. We have relax hours, where we just sit around and visit. We have the knitting hour. We have the arts and crafts hour. I think this Reset Week, we're going to have a gardening hour. We have a couple of kayakers. Somehow they've attached a camera to the front of their heads, and they're in these beautiful. Nature is very calming, and you don't actually have to be in it. You can just be watching it, especially if you're watching it with somebody you know. So when these kayakers go out, we know them. We feel like we're out there with them. I like to walk. So there's a beautiful island in Puget Sound, Vashon, a big island the size of Manhattan. So I'll go over there and take people on a walk, and we'll go past farms, and this is enormously calming. You're around people, very. When people have a body shape that's being rejected by the culture, they're not going to go out for a walk in the woods. Because people will insult them, yell at them, call them names. It's not safe. It's not psychologically safe for them to go outside sometimes. But they can go outside with their friends on screen. And then gradually the brain says, oh, yeah, we do this all the time. And then they will feel safe going out on their own or with a physical friend. Yeah.
That's so cool. So the big question that I get all the time is moderators versus abstainers.
It's coming straight out of the food industry.
Yeah.
It's coming, this is it's upsetting to everybody, including the dietitians. but dietitians are trained by the processed food industry to recommend processed foods. It's the same relationship of physicians to the pharmaceutical industry. And Rob Lustig covered this in chilling detail in his book that came out, I think last year, Metabolical. He describes the relationship of the dentists, the dietitians, and the doctors, and why those systems are not helping people. Why does this keep getting worse and worse and worse? Well, those systems are obviously ineffective. But in the US, I don't remember whether it's 30 or 40% of dietitians work for the processed food industry. If you go to a dietitian's conference, their big annual conference, which I have done, the biggest display on the floor is Kraft. And Nabisco is right next to it. So if you're going to a dietitian, you're going to somebody who's trained to recommend processed foods.
Because the first thing, so keto or low carb or banting exploded here, and it became a second religion. I don't know if it's done this in any other country, and mainly because Tim Noakes was just such a famous guy before it even came out. So it was massive. And I just remember hearing so many people say, I see it gets results and it's really effective, can reverse diabetes, all the things, and then they just dismiss it with, but everything in moderation. And you just
it's the food industry fighting back.
It's such a sterilizing thing to hear, because you're like, but how can you say that if you know that abstaining causes all these things? Okay, so you don't think it's possible, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but just if I understand, you're saying that you don't necessarily think that it's possible for someone to be in an addictive pattern and then perhaps like rebuild or heal, build new neural pathways where they understand connection is greater than abuse of substance, etc., and then be able to moderate. Not to say that one would want to, but saying someone could actually end up having a scoop of ice cream and not, going on a full binge.
It's opening a door.
Okay.
There's a monster behind that door. The only reason you would do that, the only reason you would ever do something harmful to yourself, is because the craving pathways have become activated and the frontal lobe is weak. You've got two competing systems. You've got the addicted reward centers, and you've got your rational frontal lobe. Frontal lobe is only 2% of the brain, and it's the newest part of the brain. It's the neocortex. It is low man on the totem pole. We have that saying here. It is the frontal lobe is the lowest priority in the brain, because all other parts of the brain are related to survival.
Right.
Frontal lobe is related to creativity and building skyscrapers, but that is why it will always lose the competition for control over behavior. You have these behavior centers. And if there's more craving in the brain than rational thought, then the cravings, it's a chemical thing. The cravings will be sending out enough chemicals, neurotransmitters, to go over and stimulate the behavior centers to satisfy the addiction. So that is monstrous. That's deadly. It's painful. You might be able to walk back from the edge of the cliff, and you might not. It might be 6 months later, but you'd like, oh, well, I was able to have ice cream that time, so I could have it now. But it's a stressful day. You've just lost a family member, and boom, you can't get back. So the only reason, we do have incredible evidence, this is also from Rob's book, Metabolical, that processed foods harm cell function in 8 different ways. So this is like much, much worse than smoking. If you wouldn't put a cigarette in your mouth, you definitely would never put a processed food in your mouth. And it's the circumstances under which you would say, I can moderate, I'm going to have some ice cream, Oh my gosh. Here's the thing is, what is the best life that we could possibly achieve? What is, we only have one lifetime. We want to make it totally fulfilled, totally purposeful. Our culture is not set up to do that. Our culture is set up to have a lifetime of craving and
consumption,
screen obsession. Yes. Our culture, because all these businesses now know how to create addiction and obsession, they're all focused on making our lives about buying their products. And I don't want to get to my life and the end of my life and realize that I've spent my life focused on products and services. I want to spend the rest of my life, I want to get to the end of my life thinking, man, I really helped. I helped the next person. I helped that person. I helped the other person. I helped them. I trained them to help other people. My life was soaked with uplifting people and stopping suffering. That's when I get to the end of my life, that's what I want to be able to say about my life. And I don't want to tease that monster. I do not want to tease that monster. It never turns out well. It's always a delusion. Ice cream is delicious is the same delusion. We were talking about you've got to create delusion around the product. Ice cream is delicious is the same as cigarettes are sexy.
Wow.
It's a delusion.
That's big. Yeah.
Delusion. And the only reason why, and this is why, in my opinion, if you're going to have that calm, productive life, you've got to be around people who are not eating processed foods, because otherwise that dominant drive to belong is going to drag you, whether you want to or not. If you're around people who are eating ice cream, you will find yourself eating ice cream and being sick from it, because that drive to belong will make you.
Yeah, one of my favorite things on that point is, I don't know if you can see behind my head, but the Willpower Instinct is by Dr. Kelly McGonigal. I don't know if I mentioned her, I think, in our panel, but she says that willpower is a finite resource. And so, in fact, the guy who wrote Atomic Habits, James Clear, he wrote about it as well. He said that the guys who appear to have endless willpower they're not actually as good as everyone thinks they are. All they do that's different is they never put themselves in situations where they need willpower. And so it seems like it just lasts forever.
Yeah, this requires training, but once people get off their processed foods, they're around people who aren't eating them, and their brain just says, oh, they don't eat them? Okay, well, we won't either. It becomes shockingly easy. You've got your drive to belong. These are very specialized brain cells. They are a network embedded in the whole brain, and they're called mirror neurons, because they take what they see and reflect it down into the brain and make the brain copy. It's a mechanical thing.
Mirror neurons.
The number one priority is to look at the 5 people you see the most, and we will be a composite of those 5 people.
But you're the average of your 5 closest friends or something.
It's the people you see the most. I mean, this is what research is showing us, the people that you identify with the most. So that's another reason why we have these 16 hours a day, and it's around the clock. So I think of our day as starting in Africa and Europe with broadcasting from there. And then it moves to the East Coast of the U.S., the West Coast of the U.S., and then out to the Pacific. But this is why even like for very, very busy people, if they can play this in the background while they're fixing their food and playing with their kids and getting ready for work in the morning and getting ready for bed at night and commuting, if they can play this material in the background, it works great. You don't actually have to be paying full attention, but your brain is paying attention and it's saying, wow, those people are here again. What is it they do? They don't eat processed foods. Okay, I think we better stop eating processed foods because we want to belong. Where does this come from? It comes, whether you're an evolutionist or a creationist, both, the thing that both of those bodies of thought have is allegiance, above all, to a tribe.
Yeah.
Because in your tribe, you would be protected from an invading tribe. You would have enough food, water, shelter. Your children would be raised and protected. The people who had that drive to belong to a tribe, they are the ones that passed down their genes. Their children survived. And it is by belonging to a tribe that you survived. So that is the highest priority for a brain, a human brain, is to belong to a tribe. And how do you get accepted into that tribe? How does that tribe agree to protect you? Conformance. You're behaving like they're behaving. You're adopting their behavior. You're conforming to their behavior. When they go to look for food, you go with them. They go to look for shelter, you go with them. They migrate 2 weeks, you're walking along with them. You do what they do. And that's the secret to all of this.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a large part of the marketing that you were talking about earlier uses that against us as well. You know, they take people we admire and help and like get them to endorse products. So they use that. That's why a celebrity endorsement, I think, is so powerful.
So sick. Yes, they exploit us. This is exploitation.
Totally.
This is that the origin of the word addiction. It comes from a process in ancient times where a man could settle a debt by selling himself into slavery. You would sell yourself into slavery, get a chunk of money, pay off your debt. And that process was addicare, the process of becoming addicted. So if you think of cravings as a kind of enslavement, like cravings are never normal. There's this whole big thing going on about making cravings funny or cute or charming.
Ride the wave.
No, the addiction is lying. You know, that happy family that you see in a fast food place, it's the same sickness as watching Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall flirt and smoke. Smoking is disgusting. It's repulsive. And processed foods make us depressed and angry, the opposite. So but this is it's the conformance drive. Oh, I want to be sexy like Lauren Bacall, I'm going to smoke. Oh, I want to be happy like that family. I'm going to go get some fast food. It's creepy. It's just creepy.
Wow. An eerie ending to a fantastic chat. Joan, it's been amazing chatting to you. We'll have to get you on again. I'm going to drop all of your links in here, but maybe just one last time. What action would you like people to take after hearing this chat?
So they should go to our website, Processed Food Addiction, and take the self-quiz. Do you mind if I plug the
punch your book? Punch your book. Go for it. Yeah.
This is amazing, but I'm very proud of this. It took me 3 years full time to write and edit this. It's a readable textbook, is what we say, and it's selling in the top 0.5% of Amazon books.
Wow.
So yeah, go to the website. Do sign up for our emails. And we offer training. You can train in how to do this marvelous thing. And we do offer jobs, like this is a training that goes into a job. It's a part-time job. It's kind of a supplemental income, but you can train and earn money by signing up with us. But get on our email list.
That's awesome. Well, congrats to you. And it sounds like you're doing fantastic work. I know you are. And it's been awesome having you to chat. Some serious comments in the stream, people having their minds blown. So thank you, Joan.
And all the best.
We'll be in touch soon. Thank you.
All right. Take care.